Hey guys, Andrew C here, and we're going to actually go ahead and open up some of these things, take a look at what they look like, and then we'll actually go ahead and be able to put them into the machine, and we'll see what's going to happen down the road with how everything looks, how everything gets managed cable-wise and whatnot. Two other things that will be added to this that weren't in the last video are two Noctua fans that will be, I believe they're 1200 RPM fans. They're in gray. So that they'll match the case a little better rather than the beige color that those fans typically come in. And those will go ahead and get added into this machine as well. They'll be here tomorrow, and so they'll get put in off camera. Alright, here we have the Asus Z97E. So let's go ahead and pull this thing out of here. I built a similar machine a couple months ago, and this is a little bit different board than what I used at the time, but it'll go along the same lines. So let's put that aside for now. Let's go ahead and actually pull out the Intel processor now. Now, these Intel processors, as long as they're still in the i series, they will always come with their own fan and cooler. So if you don't plan on using this for a lot of high-end editing or video games, you don't necessarily need to get a water cooler like this or even a big high-end fan for it. You can just use the stock cooler that comes with it, which looks like this. So as you know, this is pretty much the standard Intel cooler that they ship with everything. Which is a fine cooler, and they think it works fine with their products. So if you're not doing any high-end things with it that's going to put a lot of strain on your CPU, this will be probably fine. Obviously, we're planning on doing high-end gaming with it, so obviously we want to make sure we have a high-end cooler that's keeping this machine nice and cool. Speaking of the cooler, let's go ahead and relieve it from its box. Now, from what I am aware already with owning one of these and having used and installed one for another friend, this does come with an additional fan on top of the radiator. So typically where I put it is in the very back fan location, pulling cool air from outside the case in, and then I will do it in a push-pull manner. That way we're getting as much airflow through the radiator as possible. Alright, so now we're getting into the CX750M power supply, which is a modular power supply, so we'll have tons of wires in a bag just like that. That way we only need to actually use what we need in the machine. You don't need to don't have to manage a bunch of useless cables. So put that off to the side. Big hefty power cable. This is a 750 watt power supply, which will be plenty for what we're doing with it. Obviously, Intel processors are fairly power not hungry. Obviously, Intel processors aren't that power hungry, so we don't need a super high amount of power. And NVIDIA graphics cards also aren't that bad. I believe PC Part Picker put this at somewhere around a 380 watt total draw. So that is the Corsair CX750M. Get this out of the way. And then we'll take a look at the last thing here that's obviously the most important. The graphics card, the EVGA GeForce GTX 970. And it's the 4 gig version, which you need a 4 gig version to be able to play Fallout 4. Overall, this total build would set you back about $1,375 is what I believe we paid for all of this equipment. So it's definitely not cheap, but you're also talking about a machine that's going to last you a good 5-6 years and be able to play most games pretty well. You'll run into probably, I'm sure, some titles over, near the end of its lifespan where it's going to need a better graphics card or whatever. But you're talking 5 years from now, you can never predict where we're going to be computing-wise. I mean, it's going to be completely different, I imagine. All right. So obviously here this is gonna come with an 8-pin power adapter. Not all power supplies are gonna have the right exact configuration for the power that this particular graphics card needs. So they do include 2 different ways to be able to get that extra power that you need. Both an 8-pin adapter, and then there's also a 6-pin to Molex adapter that it comes with on top of the DVI to VGA adapter. So pop that open here. It's definitely well locked into this. So definitely keeping that safe. So here you go. There is the GTX 970 4GB version. It's got obviously your SLI. I believe it's got DVI. It's got 3 display ports and an HDMI port, so there's tons of outputs on this thing. Be able to do a lot of things with it, and it does take an 8 and a 6-pin power cable, which is why they come with those 2 adapters in case your machine doesn't have a power supply that can already give that. A lot of motherboards nowadays also use an 8-pin power cord, so it depends on whether you have enough extra ones on the power supply. I believe this power supply has plenty, being a brand new power supply. We should be good. So that's everything unboxed. Alright, so I've got the Corsair H50 cooler here, and one of the things you want to make sure you do is get your back plate out. It looks like this, and there's these little holes because this is capable of being used for multiple different types of boards. You want to take and get your little standoff rings that actually are what your screws will go into, and you want to put them in the correct hole for your processor type. So you want to do that first, then you will actually be adjusting these rings that these screws will go in, as well as applying these little adhesive tabs to the back of this to hold it onto your board while you are getting everything prepared. Alright, I've gone ahead and done a dry fit here of the back plate. I just wanted to point out that the back plate isn't always going to be centered. So this is the goal, what you want to happen. You want all of these standoffs to fit into the hole, and that'll be your finished back plate. Alright, once you've got the back plate in, you're going to go ahead and actually put the screws into this front plate. And they just press right through these little grommets, and then you just line them up with the screw holes on your board. Sometimes you need to rotate these a little bit from side to side, and then they'll line right up. So once you've got the screws into this retaining ring, you want to actually get your cooler unit, and you want to find these little tabs that are inside here. Get those, find those tabs. You want to put the cooler into the retaining ring, and then hold it so that it stays in there. And then figure out again, make sure you're putting it into that thing the way that you want the hoses to go, because you're not going to be able to adjust it later. And then you're going to take this plastic retaining ring that you got in the box, and it just goes right over it and snaps on. That holds that whole thing together. So now you just want to sort out what direction you want this to be going. That way your tubes are happiest. Alright, once you have your direction satisfied, you can go ahead and place everything into the holes accordingly. Again, making sure that it'll do what you want. And then once you've got all of the screws started, you want to start rotating them down in a cross pattern, so that way you're putting even pressure down on the board as you do it. Because obviously we want our thermal paste to get pressed down evenly and not all smooshed up in one side. Alright, next we'll actually go ahead and get this installed in the case, motherboard and all. Alright, so I've got the motherboard placed in here. I got the cooler all attached, as well as I got both the radiator and the fans installed here, which you can see here. I typically will install these all-in-one coolers in the push-pull manner. So that way we are pulling air in via fan 1, blowing it through the cooler, and then pulling the rest of the air through the cooler. That way we're getting the best airflow possible here. And then typically I will set up the fans to be, the top one be a full exhaust and the front to be full intake. I did notice that on this particular motherboard, the 8-pin power port is way up here under the radiator. So that'll be a little bit fun finagling in there, but shouldn't be too bad. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the power supply actually in now. That way I can finish up with this and start working on the motherboard. Alright, so we've gone ahead and got the cooler in. We've got the power supply in. I have mounted the fan up in this case because I want to make sure that there's enough airflow getting into the power supply. This case does have a filter screen and holes on the bottom to be able to get the air out here from here, but there was some comments on the review for this case that the feet might not be tall enough for this. So I want to make sure we're getting enough air, so we're not going to use that. We're just going to pull it right from inside the case. I've already gone ahead and got the 8-pin power cable put in here. I've also went ahead and put the RAM in and wired all of the fans and the pumps that are currently here. I've got 2 fans here that are going to have to come off of a Molex adapter, as well as I have put in the plug for the USB 3 jacks on the front and all of the I/O panel information here, all your LED lights and whatnot here, as well as your front panel audio here. So what is next is I will have to go and probably do the graphics card, and then we'll go ahead and get the hard drives loaded up in here. Alright, we're all put together now. We got CPU cooler, we got the power in for the graphics card, got everything all cable managed. We got our 2TB drive here, our 500 gig SSD here, DVD drive here, front fans here, both radiator fans hooked up. We got 2 fans left to go here up at the top that I've already wired the power up for, and as well as zip tied all of the cables in place. So we're all good here. Now all that's left to do is go ahead and put the sides back on, and then bring this thing downstairs, hook it up to a TV or a monitor, and then throw a flash drive in and start putting Windows on it. And then the fun part, we get to see what this thing can actually do. But that is the end of this video. So if you like this video, please hit that like button. And while you're there, you can hit that subscribe button too. We get all these videos to you every day. Hope you enjoyed this. This is probably the last one of these types of computer building videos we'll see in a while. But if we end up building another machine for someone else in the future, we'll be sure to take a look at that one too. For now, I'm Andrew C. from Ghost Incorporated. We'll see you next time.